HUD Homes. It's something that we as a company have been working towards for almost 7 years. So, it's not something that happens overnight, which is, pretty consistent with real estate in general. You've heard me say time and time again, this is a time business. Nothing happens immediately. We have to get out there and work every day towards what we want to accomplish. It's not I'm going to put 5 hours in here, 2 hours in there. It's every day. We're committed to real estate. This is our full-time profession. It's the same thing with the contracts that we have with the banks. Those don't happen overnight, and there's a great deal of work, energy, and effort put forth to make sure that we have those. The reason that it's so important to me that we have these opportunities is because it creates a tremendous opportunity for everybody in this room. And we'll get into that in just a second. But I just wanted to let everyone know that is where we're at. So I'm very happy about us being able to be awarded that contract. We actually beat out 1,600 other brokers. We were the only broker that was added this time around. So it's a big deal. Right. I feel the goosebumps. All right, let's get started. What is a HUD home? Does anyone know what a HUD home is?
Housing. It's a foreclosure that was previously financed.
That's probably the best definition. It is a home, 1 to 4 residents, that was purchased by somebody using FHA financing, which is insured by the U.S. Department of HUD. Those people defaulted, a trustee's deed foreclosure process was completed, and now the property is owned by U.S. Department of HUD. Now, when HUD gets these properties, they assign an asset manager to sell them. Now, the asset managers are regional. They're big companies that manage properties in multiple states. Now, the asset management company that is in charge of Arizona is BLB Resources. And you're going to see their name referenced a lot on the MLS. You're going to see their name referenced a lot on the marketing material. The reason that it's so important to remember that name is because most of the resources that we use in the sales process are available on their website. BLB Resources is fully responsible for hiring local brokers to sell their properties. And they have kind of oversight and management of everything that happens. When there's a problem with a contractor, there's a problem with a house, HUD calls BLB. So they have a lot of quality control measures in place with the listing brokers to really make sure that the homes are being marketed and sold effectively. Now, what BLB does, like I said, is they hire local listing brokers. We are one of those local listing brokers. There's only 3 in the East Valley. And so we're really going to have a tremendous opportunity moving forward to try and increase our REO listing inventory, increase sign calls, increase open house opportunities, and really be more successful throughout the next at least 12 months that we have the contract. All right, HUD Home Changes. The first change is it a secret to anybody that REO inventory is decreasing? We've kind of seen that over the last 12 months, right? There are fewer foreclosures. I mean, we saw a wave of them in 2008, 2009, 2010, even 2011, and then we started to see them decline. So we're still on that decline. Now, that doesn't mean that REO inventory is gone, because by no means is it gone. We still have a significant inventory of Fannie Mae properties, and we actually have already been assigned some HUD properties. That REO inventory is going to remain relatively constant based on the predictions that we see for about the next 12 months. HUD inventory has been decreased by 60%, which means that they can be a lot more selective on the brokers that they're allowing to list and sell their properties, and only choose the best brokers to do so. We're one of those. We're one of the best brokerages that has been identified to help them sell the property. Now, back on inventory changes, there are a lot of other reasons why HUD inventory has decreased 60%. It's not just because REO inventory has decreased. There is still a ton of HUD foreclosures out there. But HUD has implemented some different changes, some different avenues of selling their inventory other than the direct sales approach, such as bundling properties together, selling them to nonprofit organizations, and the like. They've also started partnering with auction.com to put some of the homes through the auction channels as opposed to going through local listing brokers. BLB believes, based on their conversation with HUD, that this is a very temporary thing. And probably within the next 8 to 12 months, those inventory assignments are probably going to revert back to where HUD can get the highest return or the highest dollar price for their inventory, and that is through the local listing brokers. But for now, this is what it is. It doesn't mean that it's going to go away. It just means that HUD can be, and BLB can be a little more selective on who they choose to sell the properties, which really puts a lot of responsibility on us to make sure we're doing things the right way. So this is the first of our training series as far as how we're going to sell HUD homes, the easy way to sell them. Bear in mind, we're not going to cover everything today. That's impossible because there's a lot of information to know in selling HUD homes. But this is going to be a good overview of how we find the properties, how we submit contracts, and general information. We'll have another one probably in about 3 weeks that talks about exactly how to fill out HUD contracts and different topics that come up throughout the sales process. Marketing HUD homes. Every broker that has an NAID number that is registered with HUD to sell HUD homes can actually market HUD homes as well. So you'll see out there that somebody might be advertising one of our listings, and that's okay. BLB and HUD allow that as long as the broker is a selling broker. All that does for us is it helps promote the properties that we have listed. We have a strategic advantage over the selling brokers because we actually have the listings. And what happens 9 times out of 10 is the buyers want to talk to the people that have the listing. So we really have a strategic advantage in that area, and we're going to do our best to make sure our marketing material is far superior to our competition, which it already is. Social media. We have really started promoting social media marketing with our listings, and that's going to be a class in of itself. We're going to dive into that a little bit next week on how we can promote our open houses, how we can promote our new listings, and different promotional material we can use on social media that doesn't cost anything. Backup offers. A recent change with HUD is they no longer hold backup offers. What they were finding is that almost every time they held a property in backup, whether it was first backup, second backup, third backup, by the time they got to, the first contract fell out and they go back to the other buyer, they found out that the buyer had already moved on. They can't remember what property they were calling about. Yeah.
Are they going to remove that from the HUD?
No, we're going to get into that.
They're not going to remove it from...
They're not going to remove it from the contract. And they said it doesn't hurt anything to check the box. For those of you that are familiar with the HUD contract, it doesn't hurt anything to check that they may hold it as a backup, because on certain hard to sell properties, they will reach back out to people that have submitted offers and have checked that box that they want their offer held as a backup. So it's not going to hurt anything to check that box.
No, I was going to say, if you don't check that box, you can't go any further on the contract.
But you can check either they may or may not. What I'm saying is it doesn't hurt to select that they may hold it as a backup, because for hard to sell properties, they will reach back out to those buyers or the brokers that have submitted offers on behalf of their buyers that have selected that their offer may be held as a backup. We've already covered that. All right, so who can sell HUD homes and who can purchase HUD homes? Let's start with selling HUD homes. We talked about real estate brokers that have a name and address identifier can sell HUD homes. A name and address identifier has to be submitted. There's an application that actually has to be completed for an NAID number to be assigned to a brokerage. We've actually had ours since our company's been open. And our NAID number, this is a really important number, so if you want to write anything down from today's meeting, this is the number you want to write down. The NAID number is a requirement to enter on HUDHomestore.com, which is where we actually submit offers to purchase properties. You can't submit an offer without that number. Now that number is tied to either a local listing broker or a selling broker. And that number says who's authorized to sign the contract on behalf of the company. Without that number, you cannot submit an offer, you can't present a contract, you can't do anything. So it's a really important number to have, and you're going to see that as we get to that screenshot. You're also going to find that there are brokers out there that don't have an NAID number. And we might receive calls from other buyers that might be working with another broker, and their broker's not registered to sell HUD properties. Some brokers don't know how easy it is. It doesn't take very long to set up. It takes a little bit of effort. You know, it gets back to that working mentality where you actually have to do some work to get what you want. But some brokers just don't want to do it. So in that instance, we might have buyers calling us and say, hey, you know what? I want to buy this property. I see you guys have it listed. Can you help me? Absolutely, we can help them. And we might have to pay a referral fee to do it. That's okay. The referral fee doesn't have to be much. You know, we can negotiate 15, 20%, whatever we negotiate with the other broker. And then what happens is we take on that buyer. We have full responsibility for it. Does that make sense to everyone?
You said it's 0470 in the number there?
AMRCAN 0470. Yes, those are numbers. All right, so all of you in this room that are licensed under American Allstar Realty, because we have an NAID number, are authorized to sell HUD homes. Now, not only do we as a brokerage have to register online at HUD Home Store, but each one of you agents needs to go online to HUDHomestore.com and register as a selling agent under this NAID number. And I would recommend that everybody do that today. Get it out of the way. It takes, 2 or 3 minutes to go online. Because we already have that number, it's super easy. You enter your license number, your name, your contact information, you're done. You set up a username and password and you're done. It's that easy.
What if you've already registered maybe a year and a half ago? Would anything change since then?
For you, probably. And the reason is because you had a recent license renewal. And unless you tell HUD Home Store that you have a new expiration date on your license, and we've seen it how many times, Lionel? It'll say that your license is expired or that your brokerage license is expired. I can't remember the exact verbiage that it used, but when that happens, it's because you haven't updated the expiration date of your license in HUDHomestore.com. So you can still log in and just update that information, and then you'll be good for the next 2 years. Does everyone understand that? So what I would strongly recommend everyone doing, again, is go to HUDHomestore.com and register as a selling agent on their website. That way, when you're getting ready to submit an offer on behalf of a client, you're ready to go. All right, now purchasing HUD homes. Any person, company, HUD-approved nonprofit, or government agency can purchase HUD homes. There's one exception, and this is an important one. Local listing brokers, which is us. Affiliates, which is everyone in this room. Owners, managers, employees, and sales agents, and family members of us are prohibited from purchasing HUD homes. That's recognized as a conflict of interest. So we're prohibited from personally or our family members from purchasing HUD homes. Now, here's something that is really important in Arizona, and I've come across it at least a dozen times. To purchase a HUD home, the buyer has to have a tax ID number. Absolutely has to have a tax ID number. Well, what if they're not a U.S. citizen?
Use someone else's social security number.
No. What if they're not a U.S. citizen? They don't have a social security number.
They would have some form of an EIN number.
Exactly right. They would need to apply for an EIN number. And they could purchase it through a business or whatever name is associated with that EIN number. So they have to have a social security number or EIN number. It won't let you submit the offer unless you have one or the other. So if you have somebody that doesn't have either one, they need to make some preparation to get an EIN number, which is really easy to do. All right, let's talk about the different types of purchasers that can buy HUD homes. The first, an owner-occupant. we have a lot of discussion about what is an owner-occupant with Fannie Mae properties. So I've tried to define this as clearly as possible with HUD homes. An owner-occupant, as defined by HUD, is a person who plans to live in the home for at least a year and has not purchased another HUD home for the previous 2 years. Does that make sense? Cut and dry. They plan on living in it for a year. They haven't purchased another HUD home in the previous 2 years. And I know we're going to get some questions about this. Well, this person, you know, they have to get a loan as a second home, but they're really going to live in it. They haven't sold their other home yet. If their loan says second home, they're not an owner-occupant. Investor. Someone buying the property for a second home, for an investment, or somebody who does not qualify for the owner-occupant. So they're planning on purchasing it, but they're only going to live there for 6 months. Well, that doesn't qualify for an owner-occupant, so it would be considered an investment. Or a business. You know, a lot of investors out there have LLCs that they purchase properties under. Those would obviously be an investment purchase. Good neighbor next door. How many of you have heard that term? Who wants to explain what it is? Nobody really knows, do they? Because how many of them do we see in Arizona? They don't come up very often. Yeah, Matt says 2. I think that's about right in the last 24 months. We don't see a lot of them. But a good neighbor next door, there is a 50% discount on the sales price of the property. And it has to be a police officer, teacher, firefighter, or EMT. And they have to agree to live in the property for 36 months. But there are certain properties that are designated for this type of purchase.
Was military taken off of that?
Yeah, I didn't see military on there.
I thought military was what that was.
It might be, I'll have to check. It wasn't listed in their guidelines, so it might have changed. These are the only professions that are listed as qualifying for the Good Neighbor Next Door in the most recent edition of their instructions. All right, government entities are also able to purchase. What's a government entity? That's self-explanatory. City of Mesa, revitalization. Maricopa County, sometimes they purchase properties in distressed areas, rehab them, try and do some neighborhood revitalization. We have the City of Phoenix, right? I don't know if any of you got that flyer that was sent out a couple of days ago where they have properties available in revitalization areas that they're offering awesome discounts on. They're providing grants for buyers to purchase the property so they don't have to bring any money. So there are a lot of programs out there that municipalities offer, and municipalities are eligible to purchase HUD properties. And then HUD approved nonprofits. In order to be a HUD approved nonprofit, there is a pretty strict screening process, obviously. They want to make sure that it's not a company that's fixing and flipping and, you know, actually turning a profit through salaries or some other means. So they have to go through that process, and they'll have an actual approval letter and number that's assigned with their nonprofit. If you ever have a question about those, somebody presents that to you as a nonprofit, just check with me and we'll research it to make sure it's good.
Can you go back there? I'm questioning the conflict between the first one, owner, occupant, and investor.
I told you we were going to have one.
Well, it seems to be a conflict there.
What's the conflict?
The fact that an investor would not be an owner occupant. I'm not seeing that. I'm not the only person seeing that.
I don't know.
Seeing
What's the question?
My question is how owner occupants only can be approved, but an investor who would not be an owner occupant does not qualify.
Doesn't qualify for
Or
what?
does qualify.
Yeah, all of these 5 types of buyers can purchase HUD properties. Yeah. What I'm providing right now is just definitions of the buyer types, and in a second I'm going to get to when they can purchase. Because there's different timelines that apply based on the type of purchaser that they are. Investors absolutely can purchase HUD properties. Just they have to wait a little bit longer. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, with HUD Homes, there are a couple of different financing types that you have to be familiar with. And the financing type is always listed on the MLS. It's always listed on HUDHomestore.com. The financing type is very important because you have to have a conversation with your buyer on how they're going to purchase the property if they're obtaining financing. So the first type is insurable. That means they qualify for regular FHA financing. There's no minimum property requirements that have to be met, or no obvious ones that have to be met. So based on an FHA as-is appraisal, nothing has to be done. It qualifies for FHA financing. That type of property might also qualify for FHA 203K financing. Next week we're actually going to talk a little bit more about what FHA 203K financing is. I'm sure everyone in the room has heard about FHA 203K financing, and nobody's ever closed a loan with FHA 203K financing. So we're going to learn a little bit more about that. Basically what it is it's a rehabilitation loan. So a buyer might want to make improvements to the property and finance the cost of those improvements. Okay, insurable with escrow. This is probably the most common type of HUD home. An insurable with escrow property is a property that qualifies for FHA 203B financing, which is regular FHA financing, but there are certain minimum property requirements that have to be met, less than $5,000. So a common example of that is when HUD goes out and inspects the property, because they do an inspection on every single one before they list it. They're going to connect a generator to the power supply and try and turn on the AC. Well, let's say the AC doesn't turn on, or the hot water heater doesn't activate. Those types of repairs would be listed as minimum property requirements. And so on Insured with Escrow, they'll say you can purchase this property, but if you're going to use FHA financing, these repairs have to be completed for the property to be considered habitable. Does that make sense to everyone? So a lot of times you'll see a property listed. Let's do a real world example. We'll see a property listed for $200,000. The AC is not working and there is an apparent leak in the plumbing system. Probably the two most common things I see on HUD homes that are IE. So they have $2,500 listed as an AC repair and $1,000 listed for a plumbing repair. Total of $3,500. So when your buyer is submitting an offer on that property, they're going to offer whatever they're going to offer. Let's just say they want to offer a list price, $200,000. At close of escrow, they're not getting a credit for that $3,500. The $3,500 is an additional financed amount. So they're getting a loan not for $200,000, but for $203,500. And then that $3,500 is held by the lender and dispersed to contractors as the repairs are completed, and they have to be completed within 90 days. Why? Because those are property requirements to make the home habitable. Does that make sense to everyone? I know a lot of people really don't understand that concept of insured escrow. It's not a credit to the buyer. It's an additional financed amount. So they have to consider that when they're making an offer. It's money that they're going to actually pay either upfront or over time, however they coordinate that with the lender. Does that make sense? Any questions about that? I know it gets a little confusing, so if we have any more questions, go ahead.
It's only when they do an FHA loan, not a conventional.
Exactly. Only on FHA loan. There are similar conventional products that function the same way, but you're right, this is only on FHA.
That's a separate loan then, right? It has been-
Not a separate loan. It's one loan. And it's just an FHA loan for $203,500, and $3,500 of that is designated towards minimum property requirements. So, as you're writing an offer on an insured with escrow, if a question comes up, seek my counsel, Matt, Lionel, we've all done them. We'll be glad to walk you through it. All right, uninsurable.
For the repairs, the contractor has to be licensed, right?
Yes.
Can't be your local handyman.
That is actually the repair person should always be licensed, but it's actually going to be a lender call on who they're going to allow to do the repairs because they kind of oversee that. But every lender that I've worked with has requested licensed contractors. It's a good rule to follow anyway. When you're talking about minimum property requirements, I don't want an unlicensed person working on the AC because you have no recourse. So that's my suggestion. All right, uninsurable. Uninsurable is uninsurable. You can't get FHA 203. You might be able to get 203K, but it just means that there are minimum property requirements that exceed $5,000. UK is, oh, I'm sorry, they changed this. This is a recent change. UI used to be that you could get 203K. Now they've actually created a new category. UI is you can't get 203K, and UK is it is 203K eligible. Does that make sense? So you can't get regular FHA financing. It has to be an FHA 203K if they want FHA financing on a UK.
Was a lot of backwards.
All right, now let's talk about property availability and bid deadlines. For insurable and insurable escrow, they're treated the same way. It used to be where those properties were available to owner occupants only for the first 30 days. They've cut that window down, effective January. It's only 15 days. So for the first 15 days, insurable and insurable with escrow are only available to owner-occupant, nonprofit, and government entities for the first 15 days. So it's nothing different really than what we're working on with Fannie Mae, except Fannie Mae's 20 days. They still have an owner-occupancy restriction, and the reason is HUD has a directive to help promote home ownership. They want owner-occupants purchasing these properties. Now this is something that's a little bit different. The initial bid review. Now the initial bid review means that for the first 10 days, all of the offers are considered to be received simultaneously. So on the 11th day, BLB collects all the offers that were submitted on days 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and they review them and look for the best offer. They're all reviewed simultaneously. There's no priority given based on when it was submitted. It's all about what's going to be the best offer for HUD to accept on that property. Now what happens if there isn't an acceptable offer during the first 10 days? Then bids are reviewed on a daily basis for the next 5 days. So for the first 15 days, you have 2 different time periods, right? You have exclusivity, which is the first 10 days, and then extended, which is the next 5 days. On a daily basis, the bids are reviewed. So let's say we get to day 16, and there hasn't been an acceptable bid on the property. What happens then? It opens up to investors. Does that make sense? And you're always going to see those deadlines on the MLS. It's part of BLB's requirement to have those deadlines published in the Realtor Remarks. So it's real easy to calculate. Any questions about that? That's a really important thing to remember. We can't sell HUD homes to investors until the property's been listed for at least 15 days. They're always reserved on insured and insured with escrow. They're always reserved to owner occupants for the first 15 days. All right, uninsured and uninsured with 203K eligible. This is a very new process that started about 12 months ago. They have a 7-day lottery period for nonprofit, government, and good neighbor next door. In the event that there is not an acceptable bid within that first 7 days, they go to owner occupants for 5 days. So there's a lot shorter window. Now, with the 5-day period, it's the same as with the first 10-day period on the insured and insured escrow. Everything is considered received simultaneously during that first 5 days, and they're reviewed on day 6. If nothing's acceptable, then it's opened up to investors. So this is a real important thing to understand, the type of insurability that they've designated for each property, because it's going to define what the timelines are, what the window bidding periods are, and when you can actually submit an offer on the property. Is everyone comfortable with that? Harold?
Are you required to keep up to date on these items on the listings? On the days?
Well, the bid deadlines are always going to be published on the MLS. So if it'll say that the owner-occupant bids are due by this day, and after that day, you'll know you'll be able to submit investor offers. Additionally, when you go online and you're submitting an offer for somebody that might not be eligible, it won't let you submit the offer because the buyer type will be grayed out. It won't let you select it. Does that make sense? So it's kind of, there is a system in place to make sure that you cannot submit an offer for somebody who's not eligible to submit an offer yet.
Well, you know, I get all the weirdos calling, okay? And I had the nonprofit they called a couple weeks ago, wanted to make an offer on one of our REOs.
Okay.
And if they call back, they'll be me that gets it. So can you tell me a little bit about what that lottery process is for the HUD homes that?
Well, they have to be an approved nonprofit. So question number 1 is, are they an FHA approved nonprofit?
Okay.
If they are, the properties that are uninsurable and uninsurable 203K are put into that lottery period for 7 days, and they would be eligible to submit offers during that time. Now, HUD is still looking at net. So if you have somebody that's putting 30, they want to offer 30% of what it's listed for, they're probably not going to be very successful. But if they're putting forth a legitimate, reasonable offer that HUD might consider, then yeah, they're eligible to submit offers during that period. But they have to have the proper approval and documentation to show that they are an FHA approved nonprofit.
So essentially, it sounds like you're describing like a normal bidding process.
Yes, it's all completed online.
Okay, so when you're saying a lottery, it's just
what they call the lottery
period.
period.
Owner occupants are not eligible.
Right. During that 7-day period, it's only the good neighbor next door, government entities, and FHA approved nonprofit. Because there's a lot of nonprofits out there that aren't necessarily FHA approved. They call themselves a nonprofit for tax benefits, but then they claim huge salaries, and that would probably make them ineligible for FHA. Does that make sense?
It does make sense.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. This gets a little confusing, and I'm not 100% up on this yet, so don't kill me with questions on this one. All right, bids received on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are considered to be received simultaneously on Monday. So if the bid deadline ends on a Friday, on Monday, BLB collects all the offers that were submitted on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and they are considered to be received at the same time, simultaneously. There's no preference given to one offer over the other based on when it was submitted. It's all based on what the net is. Now, if the bid is received on a federal holiday, it's considered to be received the day before. So, for example, let's say Wednesday is a federal holiday. On Thursday, when BLB gets in, they review the bids from Wednesday and Tuesday, and all of those are considered to be received at the same time. This is a little bit getting ahead of ourselves, but one of the things that I want you to remember from today is when you're writing an offer on a HUD property, you have to make sure that you download the contract package before your bid gets accepted. It's very important that you download the contract package and have the buyer complete it prior to the bid getting accepted. We'll get to that in just a second. Now, if you ever want to know if your bid was accepted or not, it's pretty easy to tell, because if it gets accepted, I get an email and you get an email telling you that it was accepted. If you don't get an email and you're wondering, oh, did I get it? You can always go to the bid results page on HUD Home Store and enter the FHA case number, and it has a list of the accepted bids. But 9 times out of 10, if you didn't get an email, then your bid or your client's bid wasn't accepted. All right, now how do you find HUD Homes? We've all seen them out there, right? There's the MLS. You can search by special listing condition, then select HUD-owned properties. I have some visuals of this. I'm just going to go through this real quick. There's HUDhomestore.com. You can search by anything, by the map, city, state, county, zip, buyer type. Like if you just want to look at properties that are available to investors.
Is there more homes, would there not be homes listed as HUD homes on the MLS?
HUD Homes are always listed on the MLS unless they're in the lottery period.
Oh.
There is actually a mobile app that you can download. A HUD Home Store mobile app where you can search the properties on your phone or iPad or iPhone, Android. And then, of course, on our active listing spreadsheet that's distributed every Saturday. So, accessing on the MLS from our full search, and you can set up a custom search. Started early this morning, my battery might be dying. Give me just a second here. So on the MLS, if you're doing a full search, at the bottom there's a section that's called Special Listing Condition. And one of the options down there is a category that's specifically for HUD Homes. So if you select that, you're going to see all of the HUD Homes for whatever criteria you're looking for. One of the things that we do as an office is we actually have an automatic search set up for HUD Homes. And it's emailed to the front office every day. Why is that? We want to advertise every HUD home out there. Why do we want to advertise every HUD home that's out there? Because it generates more phone calls, more email requests, more buyer opportunities. Do the same thing. Copy what works. But if you look right here, so you see the HUD-owned property? Everyone see that? Right there? I know. I had to shrink that web page to make it fit. All right. HUDhomestore.com. You can search by state. You can just click on the state button, or you can search here at the bottom. One of my favorite things to do when I was able to purchase HUD properties is I would every day look at this buyer type, select investor, type in Maricopa County, and see what I could, maybe put an offer on. Because a lot of times HUD Homes represent a great deal on the market. So not only are they a great deal for owner-occupants, but they can also be a great deal for investors, depending on what they're looking for. And then you have the mobile apps. These are in the App Store for iPhone and the Android Google Play Store. Super easy to download. This is what the app looks like on the home screen. You can search by nearby, and it'll pull up everything that's in your local market. Or you can filter the search over here, and you can select exactly what you're looking for. This is what it comes up if you're looking for a nearby home search. So it's really easy to use, super user friendly. And then of course, we have our own internal method of keeping track of our listings. These are not really HUD Homes, but I just doctored this document so you can see what they will look like as HUD Homes get listed. So we actually have a HUD home that was placed on the market yesterday evening. So this Saturday, when the active listing spreadsheet comes out, you're going to see that HUD home is on the active listing spreadsheet. One of the strategic advantages that we have over selling brokers is we as listing brokers have the ability to sit these homes open. Selling brokers aren't allowed to sit open houses for HUD. Only listing brokers are allowed to. There is one caveat. What do you think that might be? There's no utilities.
Great during the winter.
Not so great.
Or early mornings. Yeah. We have ordered some special signage for the HUD Home Open Houses, and I strongly encourage you to sit them. I know that almost none of the listing brokers are sitting their homes open. So having a strategic advantage of sitting these homes open and attracting buyers that are looking for these types of properties is huge. The property that we just listed yesterday is one turn off Chandler Boulevard in Cooper. So if anyone wants to sit it this weekend, I can almost guarantee you're going to have significant traffic if you can deal with weather.
Do we need to write signage to sit it first?
We can use either the regular open house or the metal American Allstar signs until our custom HUD Home open house signs come in, which should be the latter part of next week. I think they gave me a 17th as a delivery date. But in the meantime, we do have the black and yellow regular open house, and we have our A-frame metal open house signs. We cannot use, absolutely cannot use bank-owned open house signs on HUD homes. That's a direct violation of our contract with HUD. Does everyone hear that? Absolutely cannot use bank-owned open house signs on HUD homes. We do have special signage coming in. Make sure you check with either myself, Matt, or Lionel to get the correct signage for the HUD homes if you're going to sit it. Does anyone want to sit that this weekend? Don? All right.
It's right by my house.
Perfect. Why don't you come and see me later on today, and we'll go through a couple of
It'll
things.
have to be Sunday and I'll have to switch from Archer.
That's fine.
Paul, a dummy question. Why are Fannie Mae houses called bank-owned, but HUD not?
Fannie Mae properties technically are not bank-owned homes. They're Fannie Mae home path properties. We use the bank-owned signage because it drives traffic. So it's more of a traffic driver than a correct definition.
You're allowed to.
Yes. HUD is a little bit different, and it specifically states you cannot use that language on any advertising that you do on HUD homes. And BLB monitors that really closely. And if they ever find any bank-owned language on any of your HUD home advertising, it's a big deal. They'll make you correct it.
Why do you think that is? Is there reasoning behind it, or?
They don't want to be associated with negative advertising. And HUD Homes, they believe, has a more upbeat and uplifting advertising message than bank-owned. That's the reason behind it.
Distress, they don't want to be distressed sales.
Oh, okay.
All right. I told all of you that you want to go after today, or this afternoon, sometime today, go online at HUDhomestore.com and register. This is what the registration page looks like. Make sure that you're registering as a bidder. Do not register as the public. The public does not have access to bid on HUD homes. You have to be a bidder. At the bottom here, you see that you're going to have to select NAID type. The type that you select is selling or listing broker. And then right below that, you're going to have to enter that NAID number that I gave you earlier. Now, once you're pulling up properties on HUDhomestore.com, this is what the property information page looks like. You see right here, FHA financing type. Insured. What does that mean? Does anyone remember?
It's good for FHA.
It's good for regular FHA 203 or FHA 203B financing, which is regular FHA financing. There's no repair escrow. But it is also eligible for 203K. So the buyer can choose if they want to do regular FHA or if they want to do FHA 203K on this particular property. At the bottom here, this is where you submit an offer on behalf of your clients. See how easy that is? Now, I want to stay on this page just for a second. and I want to spend a little bit of time talking about the addendums. You heard me say that it's critical you download the contract package before you submit the offer. This is where you download it. This is also an important page because it's going to have a copy of the property condition report. Property condition reports are kind of a big deal with HUD. Because HUD does an inspection already, wouldn't you agree that we would have to disclose to the buyer what the property condition is? That is absolutely a matter of disclosure. We have to provide it because we have access to it. Where do you find the property condition report? On this page. Right there. Property condition report. If you click on that, it opens up a PDF that lists everything they know about the property, or everything that they've tested, and everything they know to be materially deficient with that property.
Is that
Basi-
easily forwarded? Can you forward that, or you just have to print it off?
Well, if you save it as a PDF on your desktop, absolutely, yeah. All right, so there's a lot of different packages on here. You see the BSP. I want to cover that real quick. BSP stands for Buyer Select Program. Prior to December of 2013, HUD contracted with certain escrow companies to handle all of the escrows that are generated. After December, I think it's December 13th, 2013, they changed that. And in Arizona, the buyer has to choose their own escrow company. HUD no longer dictates who the escrow company is going to be. So it's important to have that knowledge ahead of time and have a relationship with an escrow company that knows how to do these. Luann's actually done a couple for us and is an expert. So if you don't have somebody that you want to work with, you might want to give her a shot. You also have a couple of other forms on here. Disclosure, anything that they have to disclose about the property, whether it has lead-based paint, if there's mold, anything that they discovered would be in the disclosure section. This is probably the most important document at the bottom. The Arizona Buyer Select Program Owner-Occupant Sales Package. That has everything that you need to complete for owner-occupant purchasers. The next most important one is the Buyer Select Investor Sales Package. You're normally going to work with an owner-occupant or an investor, right? So those are the two most important documents to make sure you print out so you can have your buyer sign them before you submit the offer. And then, of course, the property condition and disclosures.
How come you're saying print off the contract when they email it to you? Well, the one I did last month, they emailed it to me. It was BLB service.
They don't always email the entire contract.
All right.
Yeah, they did that time, but they don't always do that.
Okay.
We actually have agents that have not had the correct paperwork and had to pull it off HUD Home Store, and it actually takes a lot more time to fill out all the information. This information you can pre-populate. So it saves a lot of time if you do it this way. Now you also have a whole bunch of individual documents and instructions, selling agent handbooks and whatnot. But the most important thing to remember is the property condition report, the disclosure, and one of the two sales contract packages. That's the information that you need to make sure you download from this page. Now, if you're going to submit an offer on this property, you clicked on the place a bid, it takes you to this screen. You're going to select your NAID type, which would be selling broker, and then you're going to type in your NAID number that I gave you earlier.
What? Don't forget to put their the real estate information in there, right underneath that. You have to put your licensing number right underneath that. When you type in the NAD number, the AMR CIN, right after you type that in, you're gonna have to type in your licensing number. It's SA 155624000.
Yeah, after it verifies DNA ID. Everyone knows their license number?
Can we take this package and upload it into e-sign and do electronic signatures?
No.
Or is HUD still
No.
live signatures?
Live signatures, blue ink. We just ordered 1,000 pens, and they're all blue. They're all blue. Okay, this is what the actual bid page looks like. Okay, so I was talking about how HUD Home Store is kind of smart, and it doesn't let you submit an offer that is not allowed. See how that bottom one's grayed out? It won't let you select it. So for this particular property at this time, it's only available to owner occupants and investors. And if it was in the owner occupancy period still, the investor block would be grayed out. All right, HUD contracts. We're going to have a whole class about filling this out. I'm going to go over it real quick, so don't be concerned about if I don't go over everything today, because we will have more information coming soon. The HUD contract package and earnest money should be filled out and collected prior to submitting the bid on HUD Home Store. Why? Because we've actually had situations where agents have submitted offers on HUDHomestore.com and they've been unable to get in contact with their buyer to get the necessary signatures or the earnest money required. That has to be delivered within 2 days of contract acceptance. Like I said earlier, contract has to be completed in blue ink, and it has to be live signatures. In addition to your buyer signing it and your signature and initials on a couple of documents, I have to sign it. So you have to make sure that you leave enough time to get your buyer to sign it, get me to sign it, and the best way to do that is what? Do it in advance. You have to deliver it within 2 days. We already talked about backup offers. All right, earnest money deposit. This is something that's commonly misunderstood. Earnest money has to be certified funds. What are certified funds? Cashier's check or money order. Those are the two types of certified funds. And it has to be made payable to the escrow company or the buyer's name. So I'm purchasing a HUD home, and I have selected under the Buyer Select program to use Empire West. My earnest money check is going to say Empire West Title or Paul Whittle. Understand? Not one or the other, not and. It's the escrow company or the buyer's name. The original earnest money has to be delivered to the listing broker within 2 days, 2 business days. So you get an earnest money check from your buyer that's submitting an offer on a HUD property and their bid's accepted. You have to deliver that to the listing broker within 2 days. And you also have to provide them with a copy of the Buyer Select program addendum so they know what escrow company you're using. The listing broker holds the earnest money. Everyone get that? Make sure you make a copy of the earnest money because that has to be submitted with the contract package that you overnight to BLB. How much earnest money is required?
Based on price, right?
$500
500.
under 100,000.
50,000 or less is 500. 50,001 and up is 1,000. Vacant lots, we don't see very often. Earnest money is 50% of list price. For good neighbor next door, earnest money is 1% of list price. Minimum of 500, maximum of 2,000. Earnest money with HUD Homes is a big deal. And they will keep the earnest money if the buyer doesn't perform in accordance with the contract. Owner-occupant purchasers have 45 days to close. Investors have 30 days to close. If they don't close within those timelines or any approved extensions, the earnest money is forfeited. That's why it's so important to make sure that you have, if you have an owner-occupant buyer that's getting a loan, you make sure that you have a lender that's on top of their game and can get it done on time. Lenders are critically important with HUD Homes because timelines are very date sensitive. Owner occupants, this is kind of nice, is they have 15 days to inspect the property. Investors have the same 15 days to inspect. But regardless of what they find, if they decide they want to cancel, their earnest money is forfeited. So investors that go in, I know several investors that'll submit offers blindly on properties and then inspect it later. They're putting their earnest money at risk. They can't cancel based on the result of the inspection findings. Does everybody get that? Make sure you disclose that to your investors up front. A good thing to do, give them a copy of the disclosures page, the property condition report. Invite them to look at the property before they submit an offer. And really do their due diligence before they commit to a price. There's no renegotiation on HUD Homes once a contract is accepted. The only way to renegotiate is to complete a fallout, forfeit their earnest money, and try to resubmit. All right, so I didn't have enough room on the last slide to put a picture of the earnest money check, but this is what it would look like. Empire West Title or John Smith. And of course that would be a cashier's check or a money order only. All right, one of our last topics, overbidding. Buyers, regardless of property type, should always submit an offer based on what? Market value. How do we define market value? We pull comps, right? We adjust for condition, we adjust for market factors. But they should always submit an offer based on market condition, regardless of what property is. It doesn't matter if it's a HUD, Fannie Mae, regular sale, new build. We always advise our clients to put in an offer based on market conditions. In the event your buyer decides they want to put in an offer that is above the FHA appraised value, they have to bring the difference in cash to closing. So if they're putting a bid on a property that has an FHA as is appraisal value of $200,000, they're offering $210,000. That extra $10,000 has to be brought in at close of escrow. Why is that? FHA will not issue a mortgage on a property for more than the FHA appraised value. This is a recent change with HUD. For the longest time, as long as I can remember from when I first got my license and started selling HUD Homes when they were offering 5% commissions in the good old days, some of us know about that. The HUD Homes were always listed initially at the FHA appraised value. That's no longer the case. No longer the case. Now HUD Homes are listed based on a couple of different factors. They review the appraised value, the BPO that we provide, and an AVM. Does everyone know what an AVM is? Anyone know what an AVM is? Don't be afraid. We've talked about it before. No. Automated
valuation model.
Exactly. Automated valuation model. So a whole bunch of algorithms based on the area on what home prices should be in that neighborhood. So they look at all three values and then they set a list price accordingly. The FHA appraised value is no longer disclosed. The listing brokers cannot disclose them until a contract is accepted. Period. You can ask all you want. It's against the terms of the contract. They cannot disclose appraised value until a contract is accepted. HUD never renegotiates during escrow. So in the event that your buyer decides, like we said, if they want to pay more, they have to be prepared to pay that difference in cash.
How
Okay.
do you, I'm sorry, if they don't disclose the appraised value, how do you know if you're gonna pay more?
We're going to get to that in just a second. All right, so if the buyer is using FHA financing, they're going to be required to use the FHA appraisal that HUD completed, right? Because how long is the FHA appraisal good for? 120 days, 4 months. Now there are some exceptions, and this goes to answer Rachel's question. In mortgage letter 2013-44, if the appraisal is more than 4 months old, your buyer can order a second appraisal, or your buyer's lender can order a second appraisal. If the list price was greater than the appraised value, so we list a property at $200,000, the FHA appraised value is really $195,000. Your buyer offers $200,000, they get the bid, they win the bid. Their offer is accepted. The appraisal is sent over to the lender, and they find out that the FHA appraised value was $195,000. In that case, the buyer can order a second appraisal to help make up the difference. Now, the maximum FHA insurable mortgage amount would be the lesser of the contract price, the new appraised value, or the initial list price. Does everyone understand that? Wow, beat me. It's kind of confusing. Now, if the buyer is not using FHA financing, what happens? They have to get another appraisal anyway, because the appraisal is only good for FHA financing. Or if they're getting 203K financing, they have to get a new appraisal anyway, because you have to have an as repaired value. That's about as clear as mud, isn't it? So, in the event the property is listed at a price greater than appraised value, you need to let your buyer know that that might be the case, because we don't know what the appraised value is when we're submitting the offer. And if that is the case, their lender has an opportunity to order a second appraisal and make up the difference. But if it still comes in low, the buyer is going to be responsible for that difference. Does that make sense?
And responsible for a new appraisal.
Yes. That's why we have to pull comps. That's why we always submit offers based on market value. Always. That cleared up a little bit? What's the time to do now?
Sell
Sell some HUD Homes. Thanks for sticking around. I know it was a very long presentation. There's a lot more to learn. We just scratched the surface, but again, this is an exciting opportunity for us. We're so excited about this opportunity. We have one more thing to cover for the agents that are on the corporate team. If you want to stick around for about 5 to 10 minutes. Everyone else, if you want to stick around, that's fine. If you want to leave, that's fine. Matt and Lionel?